Coming up, we're talking going the distance, completing the marathon, and making the long haul all worth it.
The Whitney Reynolds Show was made possible by O'Connor Law Firm. When it comes to your injuries, we take it personally. Sciton, because results matter. Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998. Theraderm Clinical Skincare, committed to developing skincare products designed to restore skin health and promote natural beauty. And by SD Innovations, Hollis CPAs and Associates, Four-Sided, UFC Gym Lakeview, Fresh Dental, Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, The Cryo Bar, Barkbusters, and CI Med Spa, and by other sponsors.
Crossing the finish line, fighting for what's right, and not stopping because you're tired. Today, we are talking the long haul. You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show.
Mike Hollywood Jimenez has gone the long haul with his long hook. We are talking boxing. Surprisingly though, Hollywood's first knockout was not in the ring. He swung at many things that came his way, from having a father that was deported at a young age to a mother who wasn't around. He grew up fast. Yet speed was on his side. He went on to play college football, became an iron worker, and then his knockout moment happened. He found boxing. The bell sounded and his long haul began. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So today we're talking about the long haul, and you are one that has pushed past trials that have come your way. And I would like to say just knocked them out, no pun intended. Y'all, we have a professional boxer on set that your life didn't always start out and the lights and the ring and, the bells sounding. It was a tough childhood. Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot of trials and tribulations that we had to go through as kids. My mom wasn't always around. She was battling her own demons and was gone a lot of the time growing up. And my father was deported when I was 16. So, being a young man when you really, need your parents at those times is hard to deal with, not just for me, but my brother and sister as well. And kind of made me grow up quickly and have to leave all the nonsense and all the other chaos I was doing behind. And just kind of know that I had to be the bigger man and the bigger brother and take care of them. So dealing with all that, it's definitely been a long haul. That's the best way to put it, I guess. And just having to push through all that and just kind of know that there's bigger and better things to come.
Yeah, your story speaks to that situation after situation. So I want to go back whenever you said you were a child and your mom was away. How long did that last? Was it most of your childhood?
So it wasn't just one long period that she was gone. She'd be gone for, days, weeks, months, sometimes years. And it was hard just because she's gone, then she comes back and you think she's going to stay, and then she's gone again, then she comes back, and just kind of dealing with that. And then eventually, I just put up a wall, and our relationship was not the best for a very long time. But, I grew older, I matured, and, she's very in our lives now. She's a very loving mother. But having to deal with that and kind of have that wall up, that was just something I did to, kind of cope with the situation. And it was just, as a kid, you want your mother there, for advice, for different situations, for a lot of things. But she wasn't. So I had to deal with that best I could. And then when she was back, it was just kind of a long few years of having to mend things and kind of open that relationship back up. And now, we have a great relationship.
Yeah, you can
and,
hear her anytime we see you on TV. We see your mom because she is your biggest fan.
Yeah, she's definitely my biggest fan. She's the loudest one in the crowd at all times, and she's running to everyone that'll listen, that I'm her son and wants to rave about all the good things that I'm doing. And it's nice to see that now, and I'm happy that she can kind of show me off and brag about me and stuff. But yeah, looking back on how things used to be, this is we've come a long way.
Well, I bet that gives a lot of our viewers some hope in the situations they might be in. And then your dad got deported on top of your mom being in and out,
Hmm.
and he got deported back to Colombia. What was that like for you in that moment? Was it kind of that rock bottom?
That was not even probably. That was definitely the saddest and lowest time of my life. Growing up, my dad always had to be there with our friends at events, always giving us a ride to and back. Like, he was our best friend. Like, he was like my friend's best friend. He was always there for everything. So when he was taken from us, it was just so hard to deal with. Not, I mean, being a young kid, like, not knowing what is coming next. Like, when's he gonna come back? Is he ever gonna come back? Am I ever gonna see him again? It was just a lot of the unknown at the time. And now, we talk to him daily, a few times a week. I go visit him as much as I can. My fiance and I, we've gone down to visit him a couple times now, and she's got a relationship with our family down there and stuff. So
Amazing.
yeah,
It
yeah.
truly is. So then having these situations kind of form your childhood,
Mhm.
which, people have that decision in my journey or also the long haul. I can go several different ways. What kept you to keep dreaming?
That goes back to those trials and the tribulations that I had to go through as a kid. And one thing that I always say is that, you know, things can always be worse, because the things that I had to endure as a kid and the things I had to go through as a child and a young teenager, I don't want to put that on anybody, because that was, like I said, those were the hardest times of my life. And just knowing that things can always be worse, and that you got to hold on to, the positivity and the happiness that you have, and you have to just push through and just kind of just keep on keeping on, and just going after your dreams, going after what you can see right there and get. You got to do it. And boxing was a huge platform for me to do that.
Well, that's what I was going to say. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you did with boxing. You keep pushing on. And I know that we shared this earlier about the fight where you lost.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that, and then how you have now kept on, because you're, like I said, a professional boxer. You get
Mhm.
back up and go.
So in boxing, I mean, no one's gonna go undefeated. I mean, it's happened a couple of times, but you're not gonna go undefeated. You have to realize that taking a loss is not the end of the world. It's just a speed bump. Same thing. You got to be positive. You got to be happy with your situation where you're at, and then you have to see how you can, just reevaluate things and just keep moving on, bettering yourself, and just pushing on to bigger and better things. And after I suffered that loss, that's what I had to do. And
And this was
just
your
gotta
first
push on.
loss. Is that correct?
Yeah, at the time that was my first loss. Now I have two, but
Oh,
that was my first loss.
we won't speak about the second one.
It's okay.
But the first one, it would be very hard to get past that, especially whenever you've been undefeated up
Mhm.
until that time.
Yeah, so as a boxer, for a guy like myself, you hold yourself to a certain standard. You're like the macho-ness and the charisma, and you hold yourself to that. And then you take a loss, and it's just like such a big, stab in the side, and just, takes a piece out of you. But you have to know that, like I said, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
It's just a speed bump. Losses come and losses go, and you just have to move on from it, learn from your mistakes, and learn how you can get better. And you just got to keep pushing on.
So, what would you want our viewers to know in their long hauls? Because all of ours are going to look
Mhm.
very different, folks. They might be going through something else, but from someone that has persevered after challenge through challenge, what would be your advice?
So something that I preach to everybody is just like positivity and happiness. And
How do you find those two things? Because that sounds like a perfect recipe, but where do you find your positivity and happiness?
The positivity just comes from knowing, I mean, I keep saying it, but like things can always be worse.
Okay.
Because when I hit rock bottom, when I felt like my life was at the lowest point and I was the most sad that I've ever been, like for me, that was the worst. Like things can always be worse. And that's never going to happen again. I'm not going to allow it to happen again. But you have to be positive in like every situation and know that, yeah, things can be worse. Like things might be bad right now, but they're not that bad. You have to find a way out. You have to see that there's different avenues to just get your way out. And then the happiness thing is like this point in my life, like happiness has a value above everything. Because if you have that happiness and that self happiness, and then you put that together with like your positivity, like you can do great things. You can do amazing things. Just staying happy, staying positive, and just not letting those outside things kind of drag you down, and just kind of just be in that negative mindset. Ever, you just gotta just stay positive.
Well, I'm gonna take
happy.
a note from you in the boxing ring. If we get knocked down, we will get back up.
That's what you gotta do.
Thank you so much for
Yeah, of
joining
course.
us.
Thank you.
It's now time for your words of wisdom. We're taking it to the street, and we want to know what keeps you going.
My 3 daughters made me change a lot, so that's my motivation, to be honest. They motivate me every day, so that's why I wake up, do what I do. They changed the world from the world that I was living in, the violence, the gangs. When you bring kids in the world, you got to change, so they always motivate me and bring me up. There's never a dull moment with them.
What actually gets me out of my house almost every day is the opportunity for me to be legal here in this country, because I've been here for 9 years and I've been always dreaming about the opportunity to be a citizen one of these days, and that's basically a dream for me. It is really important for me, and I'm sure it is for many people.
Solving the nation's incarceration epidemic could take decades. We want to introduce you to a lady that's not stopping until it's done.
Deanne Benos says 98% of women in prison are rape or domestic abuse victims. This LongHaul Lady is a mover, shaker, and policymaker. She's worked for the White House and the United Nations, but it was during her time as the first woman assistant director to the Illinois Department of Correction that she started the journey to fill a major gap for women in prison. She is looking past the barbed wire, becoming a voice for the cuffed, and hope for change. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
So we've been talking about the long haul today, and not only have you gone the long haul for these women, but you've also tried to shorten their haul.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
a good way to put it.
I look at these numbers and we were going through them, and it's really incredible to discover what you have found. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, right now what's interesting is that nationally, mass incarceration is an epidemic for men and for women. But what we're finding is as the dialogue about reform has kind of started to take hold in little spurts, most of the interventions have been targeted for men, because men traditionally have been a larger portion of the prison population. But what we've overlooked is that in 35 states, where maybe prison populations have gone downward slightly, women's populations have gone up while the men's population has gone down. And we overlook women. Women are a smaller portion of the population, but they're the fastest growing across our country. And they're in prison for failures of society to support them and some pretty gendered inequities.
Can we? Yeah, I want to dive into that part of it, because that's really interesting. So you say a lot of the prison uptick for women is because of society?
Yeah, I would say.
Can you give us some examples?
Yes, I will. And we've started a project called Redefine the Narrative, because we want to redefine the narrative about what justice means and real justice means for women. And we don't believe that you can find it in a prison cell. So when you look at the women's prison population in Illinois in particular and across the country, we have Illinois specific data that 98, and this is not, I'm saying 98% of women in Illinois prisons have experienced sexual or domestic violence in their lifetimes. They have an exponentially higher rate of ACE scores than men or boys that enter the system. And an ACE score is a score for the amount of trauma that they've experienced in their childhood at a young age. Women are in prison for mostly drug and property-related crimes, which we believe stems from trauma and abuse.
So that's a key part. That's I want to stop you right there for just a second. So you're saying some of these crimes that they're in there for stem from the abuse early on.
And overall, and I want to be really careful when I say this, we know that overall the problem in our country, and it's not new just because, it's wonderful that there's a national dialogue about police reform, moving throughout the country, and that it's taking hold and people are, amplifying their voices. But these issues have existed for a very, 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 very long time, and they should have been addressed a very, very, very long time ago. So our overall justice system does not produce justice for the majority of people. The criminal justice system is really the wrong response to poverty and social conditions, and men and women experience those conditions differently. The problem is that the way women experience those conditions is just, is despicable. When you look at the fact, like I have a couple hats in the women's space. I used to work with a woman named Jolie Smolansky, who was an executive producer of The Hunting Ground on.
We actually had The Hunting Ground featured on the show.
Did.
Yes, we did.
And she was on stage with Lady Gaga and celebrating the voice of survivors. But she had started a nonprofit years ago about the fact that there were 400,000 untested rape kits across the country. And a rape kit would allow a police officer to identify a sexual predator through a DNA test and modern technology to keep the majority of rape victims who are women safe. And yet for decades, or for not decades, for more than a decade, I would say, criminal justice agencies have said, oh, we don't have the resources to address those issues. So we don't have the resources to address issues to keep women safe from sexual violence, but we have millions and billions of dollars to incarcerate them for what happens when we don't address those issues.
That's such an interesting point, like whenever you peel it back. And one of the things I was thinking about the segment is sometimes when people go behind bars, they lose their voice, they lose their identity in a sense. Like we forget that people are living behind bars and you are being that voice. Why do you care so passionately about this?
Well, I would say that, and I don't even think I'm the right voice. I think women who've experienced the system should be the voice, and our organization is dedicated to help building capacity of that space. But I'm using my voice because I was in a really interesting twist of fate. I became the first woman confirmed by the Senate to be the assistant director of the Illinois Department of Corrections. And in jargon terms, I was never a police officer. I was never a correctional officer. I was a policy nerd with a passion for changing our justice system. And a twist of fate brought me into that job as a reformer. And as someone who, like a lot of women who's experienced my own trauma, what I found was that the system was not only broken, and when I say that, it functions by design and how it was supposed to, but we can say it's broken and that doesn't work the way that people say it should. But I would say that as I walked through the prison system as someone who had not functioned within that environment in a long time, it's very plain to see how inhumane and barbaric it is. Men and women function differently in it, but what I found with women is that they were more communicative. 80% are mothers. They always want to talk about being separated from their children. The trauma is exponential. And what's even more sick about it, and why our organization is committed to decarceration, is that, any clinician, any expert would tell you that if you take a victim of trauma, and especially a woman who's experienced rape at the hands of a man,
right,
and then you take racism and structural racism, and you just bundle it all up into prisons that mostly house people of color from Chicago and Illinois that are, 80-90% male officers, and you put women there who have no control over their daily lives and are in confined settings that clinically trigger coping mechanisms of trauma. It's inhumane.
Mm-hmm.
It's inhumane. The way we design our system is inhumane. The way we define accountability is inhumane, and it profoundly harms women. It doesn't just harm them. It's not just, oh, you've been punished. We are killing women. We are making them sick, and we are putting them in an inhumane situation.
So going back to the long haul, you have all this data, you have more that's coming out. Are we almost there, or do you have to release it? And then how do we change the system?
Well, what you find throughout the country is that there's always this pendulum. There's a pendulum of public outcry over an issue for a minute. And sometimes those minutes don't turn into movements or change. And, many of our partners in our organization and women that frankly have led the fight for police reform far longer than I ever have. We've all been moved to see where the dialogue was, but we want to see action. And in Illinois, we've seen some exciting opportunity. We have a lieutenant governor who sponsored a law that we drafted with impacted women to create the highest standards in the country for the women's prisons. The support is there, but we have to remember the reality check that if these systems could be fixed overnight or by one person or two, they would have been fixed. Right. The challenges go very deep, and we're committed to being there, but our organization has worked and is going to continue to work to improve conditions in the prisons, but we are going to prioritize ways to get women out and what mechanisms can be put into place.
And there you go again. You just keep going.
Yep.
I love it. Right. I'm excited to see what you're going to do in the future. I mean, everything that you just said, it was eye-opening to me, and I want to learn more, and I can't wait to see what you do. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
We have things that can stop us in our tracks, but how do we keep moving? The haul might be long, but keep going forward. And as our next guest says, finish the marathon. Let's take a look at her advice on completing the race.
Whitney runs a marathon, a movie intended to be a comedy, but it could leave you asking questions about what other races or journeys in our lives need to be finished.
We were talking about anything could be a marathon. It could be an uncomfortable call to a doctor to find out some results, or ending a toxic friendship, or leaving a job that doesn't fulfill you. It can be anything, but making that first step is such a beautiful thing.
And Brittany, a real-life person, played by Jillian Bell, is someone we can all relate to.
The first time I read the script, I emotionally connected. I thought, this is a person I know very well. This is maybe me. This is one of my best friends. It reminded me of my dad at moments. And I just thought that other people would relate to it too. And so when we started prepping for the film, it was an emotional roller coaster. And I went through the physical aspect of it too, to get ready and trained for the whole process. But it's something I hold very dear.
And just like in this movie, you want to cheer her on.
She has some major flaws too. I think that's what's beautiful about the story, is there's moments where you are rooting for her, obviously, hopefully, and but there's moments too where you want to smack her upside the head and say, accept love and accept other people rooting for you, and it's complex and layered in a way that I've never played before.
Throughout this movie, Brittany reminds us it could be easier to give up on all of life's type races, but the finish line is too sweet not to see it for yourself. Next up, we have a doctor that's gone the long haul, flying thousands of miles to help complete strangers.
The most fruitful for me were those where I would actually see a patient that had a deformity arranged ahead of time by clinic or, whoever I was meeting with, and then do the surgery on them and get to see the fruitful benefits of a restored person.
His passion for helping people started on his family's farm and then transitioned to the operating room.
Being a plastic and reconstructive surgeon, every day I've been in the office as far as my work years, or in the operating room, operating and then seeing patients back in the office that had some sort of deformity or injury that prevented normal life. And it could have been a housewife that cut a tendon, but that's still important to her to be able to take care of a home, cook, and do those things. So it's not always vocational. It's getting people back to being the best that they can be with the body that God gave them.
But then he took it a step further and went the literal long haul across the globe to foreign countries and volunteered his time.
This young girl was in a nomadic tribe, and she was trying to start the morning fire for cooking whatever in a pot that they'd cook for breakfast. And she poured gasoline on the fire rather than diesel fuel to fan the flames. And she got horrible third-degree burns. And it was 150 miles to the nearest town, so she didn't get to go to the emergency room or anything else. But she had severe deformities from her burns, mostly to her hand and arm. And I was over there on a medical mission trip, and of course we arranged to have surgery.
And after 4 decades of operations, he still gets choked up thinking about his patients.
To see those little kids grow up, and then when there's high school seniors come back in the office, that's a good feeling.
Shout out to all my long haulers. Keep going the distance. And if this sparks something in you today, take note of that and keep moving forward.
The Whitney Reynolds Show was made possible by O'Connor Law Firm. When it comes to your injuries, we take it personally. Saiton, because results matter. Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998. Theraderm Clinical Skincare, committed to developing skincare products designed to restore skin health and promote natural beauty. And by SD Innovations, Hollis CPAs and Associates, Four-Sided, UFC Gym Lakeview, Fresh Dental, Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, The Cryo Bar, Barkbusters, and CI Med Spa, and by other sponsors. Go beyond the interview with Whitney Reynolds and her 52-week guide of inspiration. The book goes deeper into the topics you see on The Whitney Reynolds Show. To get your copy for $12.95 plus shipping and handling, go to whitneyreynolds.com/store and use code PBS. For more information on today's program, visit whitneyreynolds.com or follow us on social media. On Twitter @Whitney Reynolds and on Instagram @Whitney_Reynolds.